It's hard to let go of things, but the older we get, the more harm clutter can bring to our well-being. There is a growing body of research on the relationship between clutter and aging, focusing on how clutter impacts mental and physical well-being in older adults. Clutter can lead to increased cognitive load, making it harder for older adults to focus and process information. Excessive clutter can make it difficult for older adults to find things, which may further strain memory and organizational skills. And for older adults, living in a cluttered environment can increase feelings of being overwhelmed and out of control, which may contribute to depression or anxiety. Now, with my 60th birthday coming up next month, I am looking at many of the different ways that we can celebrate aging instead of fearing it. Last episode, we looked at dressing well as we age. And this week, Dr. Christine Lee and I discuss clutter and aging and how to break through the barriers that keep us clinging to the stuff we know we should let go of. So grab your hefty trash bags and come on in. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind.
Hello.
Hi there. I'm Rita Black.
And come on
I'm a clinical
in.
hypnotherapist,
Nice to
weight
see you
loss
this week.
expert,
Thanks for
best-selling
coming.
author, and the creator
As this
of the
episode is
Shift
dropping
Weight
here in the
Mastery
United
process.
States, we are heading
And not
into
only
a
have
Labor
I
Day
helped
weekend,
thousands of
our
people over
3-day
the past
weekend.
20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking podcast, where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life.
As we get past the Labor Day weekend, everybody dives into the autumn, if not weather-wise, because for a lot of us it still remains hot through September and October, but mentally there's this sense of shift, and we are stepping into a more structured time, reorganizing after the summer. Many people have children or grandchildren going off to school. It's kind of that back to school mindset, even though we may not have been in school in years. You know, when I lived in Europe, everybody was away in August for most of the month. So it was just a sense of coming back from the big holiday and getting ready for heading into the autumn and all the holidays of the autumn season. Everything just is all about getting organized and structured. And as a Virgo, personally, I love it. I love getting organized and I love getting structured. So that is why I brought my dear friend and colleague, Christine Lee, on today. We are going to talk about clutter. What's it all about? And how our relationship with it changes as we age, and how it can really begin to impact us more as we age. And I want us all to take back our power from the things that take our power away and our energy away as we age, whether you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, your 80s, or 90s and beyond. You are the creator of your life and the space you live in, and it should uplift you and not bring you down, right? So also, Dr. Christine Lee has a special treat for us. She has a 5-day challenge starting September 16th and running through September 20th. It's called Re-Energize Your Home. It's a 5-day challenge, and it's going to help us get excited and inspired to remove the clutter and have our home be a place that supports us rather than stresses us out. So find the links in the show notes and sign up for this great event and get your life and your house all organized for the upcoming season. Now, many of you already know Dr. Christine Lee because she has been on my show a couple of times. But if you don't, Dr. Christine Lee has been working as a New York based clinical psychologist for the past 20 years. And more recently, she has been taking her work online as the procrastination coach. She helps people who are struggling with underperforming at work and at home to work smoothly and bring in high levels of productivity. Her unique coaching process is a blend of mindset strategy, time and emotion management tips, and a deep belief in the power that we each have when we treat ourselves with love and good self care. Dr. Lee is the author of the book 5-Minute Self Discipline Exercises Stay Motivated, Cultivate Good Habits, and Achieve Your Goals, and is the host of the podcast Make Time for Success. So follow Dr. Lee to learn how to ditch the guilt, judgment, and self-sabotaging and unhelpful habits so that you can feel focused and fulfilled in your life. And now let's welcome Dr. Lee. Hey, Christine, welcome back to the Thin Thinking Podcast.
Thank you, Rita. So good to be back. So good to talk to you again.
Yes, you are probably, how many times have we had you on? I think this is your third time, which is really awesome. Third time lucky. Well, every time we have you on is lucky.
Thank you so much.
Christine and I were just sitting here talking about aging, of course, which is our topic for the month. And Christine and I think I'm a few years ahead of Christine, but we're both heading into that zone. And we have a lot to talk about. But before we do, I just want Christine to introduce herself to you and just let you know, because Christine does a very special thing for people, and I want her to tell you.
Okay. Thanks, Rita. Hi, my friends on the podcast. I love Rita's community, and Rita and I have so enjoyed working together and kind of having clients in common and having so much information to share with each other about the work, about these issues that women face just for being women and also navigating such complex roles that we do, right? No matter what your age is, being a woman is just an interesting, fascinating, multi-layered situation. And I think when you get into middle age and beyond, I was just talking with Rita about how you have this positive energy of liveliness and vitality and wishes and what you want to build for yourself, coexisting with a lot of negative energy, which can be anything. It could be illness, it could be worries, it could be job stress, it could be family stress, it could be physical clutter, lots of things that threaten to kind of set you off balance from a healthy, vibrant, positive, self-directed journey forward. And what I do, I'm a psychologist in New York, is basically I enjoy helping people to see what is going on with their habits, their daily and weekly and monthly habits, and maybe their life habits. What is going on with those habits that might be holding them back in some way that is familiar, maybe not so adaptive, maybe can be tweaked just from a word or two or a couple sessions so that the person can feel much more themselves, much more like they're ready to go instead of feeling like they're worried about everything. And that is really what lights me up. And this is what I do for my own life. I've been doing this for my own life for several decades. And I've developed all sorts of techniques and philosophies about what helps people to just get going after a period of feeling stuck, even if that period has been many, many years long. I call myself procrastination coach because I spent the first part of my life as a severe procrastinator. And I'm spending the second part of my life trying to help people to really avoid that need to rely on avoidance and maladaptive techniques of coping, like stress, like negativity, like not doing things, like being sedentary, those kinds of things. And we've all been there, both sides, the positive and the negative. So I'm just trying to kind of help everybody to lean a little bit more positively, especially in midlife and beyond, when the stresses are really potent and oftentimes not fully discussed or supported, when there's just a lot of stress around.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of I see those two lines. I see an age of self-mastery because you're at this age where you've done so much in your life, you have a lot of wisdom and experience. But what isn't mastered really gets in your way, or what is unfulfilled really haunts you. So you have this, confidence, but at the same time, it's kind of dulled by limiting beliefs, limiting habits, like you were saying, and a very loud inner critic that's like, well, you think you're hot stuff, but you haven't done that yet, or you're still doing that, or you never did this. So I think, it's a time to come to center and really look at everything. But what we were going to talk about a little bit, or at least as a diving off point, is clutter. Because I told Christine, I said, I want to tell you the story, Christine. And I said, but I'm going to wait till the podcast microphone is on so I can tell it. So my husband, as if any of my listeners have listened for a long enough time, they all know and love my husband because he is a hoarder. Like, he'll bring in stuff. I mean, my house is pretty clear of clutter because I work very hard at keeping it clutter free. Everything goes up into the attic. And so we have been working for a couple of years. I've been talking about this ongoing attic project. My son is home. And so my son was like, I will work with dad on the attic to, for a few days. So they went up and they were pulling down books, and my husband's very attached to books and all of his books, but they bring down these big plastic black things. And I'm like, what the heck are these? And these big long cylinder things. And my husband was like, and they're like covered with, I don't know, stuff like dust and cobwebs. And I'm like, are you taking that stuff down the street? And my husband's like, no, no. I mean, this is our old shelving unit that we for sure, like, don't you think one day we're going to need it again? And I was like, take that down to the street. No, I was like, no, if we need to buy another one, we will, but please, no. You're like, and the look of, like, because I love my husband so much, he gets this little boy look, like, really, I've got to let go of this. And I'm like, yeah, you do. So why is that, Christine? Like because I see that so much. I mean, even myself, I was cleaning out my office the other day, and it was, clearly things that are just like, Rita, chuck it away. But there was this, even taxes. Like, my son was working on my taxes from 1994. They're up in the attic, and I was like, oh, those receipts. I might want to look at them and remember what I bought in 1994. I mean, like, how ridiculous is that? But there was this part of my heart. So what is that about? And why, as we get older, does it seem to get deeper? That I don't want to let that go.
I I love you so much, and I have a feeling I will love your husband just as much as I love you. I can I think I can explain that entirely, right? It's a little bit of a mystery of life, is what is attachment and what makes us care for things as we do, care for people, care for shelving, care for old shelving that we haven't even thought about. And I think rather than explaining it, I just would like to marvel at it. Like, we're all
Yeah.
capable of that attachment process. But what your story makes me think of is how much room that we have for attachment, but also how much room we can create when we know that not all attachments are created equal, and that we
Mhm.
have some say over that process after the attachment is made. And of course, before the attachment, we can also say, you know what, I'm not touching that. I'm walking by that in the store. They say
Right.
that once you touch a sweater in a store, you feel like it's yours. I can't explain why that is, but I know that that's what they say. Like, if you want to kind of maintain a budget, don't touch things when you're shopping. And
Hmm.
I do think that it's all energy exchange. So I teach people that our physical clutter is energized. It may seem inanimate to you, but it's literally, comprised of atoms, and um, also contains our projections of memories, of thoughts, of value, of emotion, of sentimentality, of history, of sometimes even hatred, right? Sometimes you hate your clutter. It can carry really intense energy, I think, also.
Mhm.
And the fact that we call it clutter is just a whole other layer of energy that we have to manage, which is I am living with something that I have deemed not necessary, not beautiful, not loved. And I think as I've worked with people to gradually get the courage to chip away at their clutter day by day, I see how important it is to give yourself that zone of freedom in your space. Because we're
Mhm.
talking not just some random space, this is your home. And
Yeah.
it's very much like your heart outside of your body is your home. And it should be comfortable and it should be as open, I think, as you can manage. And that doesn't mean that it has to be clutter free or minimalist in any way, but that it reflects kind of your freedom of movement and your freedom of feeling. And we are allowed to be attached to anything that we want, right? Rita can see in the video, I've got this kind of neon, funky piece of art behind me. And I, for whatever reason, I know a bunch of reasons, got attached to it and I purchased it and it's in my home. Does it fit with anything else in my home? No, but I'm allowed to do that. And I celebrate the fact that we get to do this as individuals, that we get to decide who we fall in love with, right? We get to decide what we care about. That's kind of the beauty of living. Clutter for me is kind of almost the opposite. It's like what we've already decided we've fallen out of love with. And much
Mhm.
like you wouldn't necessarily keep a whole bunch of your ex-boyfriends or girlfriends in your home with you, why are we actually tolerating this energy that we no longer connect with, that no longer makes us feel elevated or well? It actually makes us feel depleted or burdened.
Yeah.
And, when you really take a look at it, it's a very important thing to sort out. And I see people, including myself, leaving it to the very last item on the to-do list. And then it's like this nagging thing because, every time you walk by the pantry, you see it's a mess or you see the expired food. And it's like a constant pinging. And what
Yeah.
would life be like without this noise, right? How
Right.
would you feel? How would you operate? Could you do more things? Could you rest better? Could you feel better about yourself? All these things are possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're absolutely right. When before we turned on the microphone, you mentioned something that was interesting to me about the clutter because you were talking about passive and active. Passive and active. Can you speak to that a little bit? I want to know more about like we collect things passively and then actively, I think is what you were kind of putting it into a phrase.
Okay. What comes to mind, I don't quite remember what we were talking about, but what comes to mind is actually women of a certain age are getting clutter that they never asked for.
Oh,
Were
okay.
we talking about that? Because we're
No,
talking
but tell me
about
about this. So like women of a
we're
certain age are getting like passed down stuff from their parents or right.
or from other people are downsizing, they're getting their stuff. Their
Mhm.
kids are leaving
Leaving.
their stuff in their home, in their basements. There are gifts coming in because gifts will come in. And there's no reverse flow. There's no in and then out process. And what I've seen is really woman after woman after woman with a whole room or several rooms in their home that are a source of embarrassment, that cannot house people, do not serve their original purpose, feel like they're constantly calling the women to declutter. And it's not junk either. It's actually serious stuff in there. Pictures of family. It's old paperwork from old careers. And it's stuff with a lot of sentimental and life meaning. And I really always, no matter what I do, I really try to respect and honor the person's journey, because just because I don't care about the stuff doesn't mean that it's not super important
Yeah.
in some way to their life story, right? And
Hmm.
it can take years to coach people sometimes into letting go of certain things. And I
Yeah.
am just not surprised by that at all. Like, I get it, because you know what? There are things I can't even think of for myself right now that I need to let go of, that I'm still not letting go of, right? I'm not going
Right.
to judge, because I'm just like you. I am just,
Right.
this
Right.
is why I've, proclaimed myself the leader of the declutterers, because I have the same issues.
Right.
But the difference now is that I'm bringing an energy of no judgment and the promise of freedom afterwards, right? And what we do
Yeah.
when we keep our clutter is saying, you know what? My freedom is just not doing it at all, right? I'm choosing the freedom of the short term. I don't have to touch that stuff. I don't have to get my hands dirty. I don't have to waste my time with that pile that I hate, and
Or make those decisions. I mean, because
um,
it is tough.
it is. It's emotional.
Your
And
brain goes
sometimes
into overwhelm. We don't want
and
to feel those feelings.
sometimes we're already overwhelmed even before doing that, right?
Mhm.
Just regular
Mhm.
life, just holding down the job, the fort, the everything is already that.
Taxing enough.
And people are really feeling short on time as well, I think, for a
Yeah.
long, long time, right? And so, I think clutter is just always going to be a potential issue, but I do think that it's one of the simpler ways that you can make a big difference in your own energy. And I think what I've learned through this process as well is time. If you're not looking at us on video, many of you are not. One finger I'm holding up, it represents time, and the other represents energy. And so many of us spend so much of our effort really trying to save time in some way, or we regret the use of time, or blah, 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 when really what we're actually needing to manage a little bit more closely and smartly is our energy,
Mm.
because our energy is really like our life force. Time is just always going to be ticking by. We really don't have control over that so much, right? We can try to make the most of what we have. But our energy is something that not only can we use really much more carefully and mindfully, but it's also something that we can replenish. And that's something that I've learned through social media and following all these people who are saying this kind of a thing, but also seeing that when you get rid of clutter, you actually get your energy returned to you. And that is just, for me, like, this is fun. Like,
Yeah.
I
To
don't
see
need
people
I don't
transform their
need
energy.
anything. Yeah. I need, this new high that doesn't cost anything, that is just like, I can get this at any time. I can help someone declutter, or I can declutter myself. And I just think it's important to really have people understand that their energy is at stake.
Yeah, that's amazing. What are some main roadblocks that you see with people and decluttering? Like, what are some, other than like just feeling overwhelmed or too tired? Like, if I was actually gonna, like, if you were like, Rita, well, all those books behind you, like, what? It doesn't seem like you've read them in the last year or two. Like, why don't you just put them in a box and give them away? I would say, well, I might need them one day. Might need them for research, or I might need them to refer to. So and like there must be some main psychological, like, you know, what are some of the main ones that you see coming up for people when you're working with them?
Okay, you've already covered, I think, one of them at least. So three things come to mind, not all psychological. The first is physical pain. Some people are ailing, right? Their knees are not working so well, their back aches. Clutter can be, right? Garage clutter can be really heavy, kind
Okay.
of, right? Some scary stuff in there, maybe, or just so many years piled up. It can be almost dangerous, a situation. So I've definitely heard people saying, I can't, I physically can't. And I've seen time and time again that actually you can, right? And it
Mm,
just, you need the support, you need to make sure everybody's safe, but everybody can do this piece by piece decluttering. And I definitely teach this piece by piece, like you do 1 to 3 items, call it good, and then learn to nurture that feeling of, oh, wow, I've accomplished something. I've started. I'm not injured. I'm not hating this. I'm actually finding stuff and I'm making decisions and I feel okay by this. So it's this kind of healing process. I do think
yeah.
it can be a healing process. The second thing was what you touched on was the idea that I might need this someday. Big block for people, including me. Lots of us were raised on the don't waste anything, don't let
Hmm.
anything go kind of model. I certainly was raised in that way. But as we know from just thinking about positive psychology and manifestation language, that anytime you're feeling in need, you're actually going to put yourself in a state of need so that there is a fear that there's something that you're going to be unprepared for, that you won't be able to manage, that you won't have the resources for. But when you look at your abundance of clutter and your abundance of resources and talents and money, to be honest, there really is no lack. And honestly, you want to put yourself in a state of abundance anyway, because
Yeah.
you really are living abundantly. You have so much that you don't even know what to do with this stuff. And really, what would it be like to not live with that kind of worry anyway? And just like your husband with the shelves, like if he hadn't gone to that space, would he ever have thought about that at all? It's just kind of like, we think about it when it's in our presence, but when it's gone, we don't have to think about it
Right.
anymore. So there's no need. And do people make mistakes in that regard? Sure. Right? Maybe one out of 50 times you declutter something and you really, really, really shouldn't have, but you'll survive that too. There is no such, I just think people don't fall into massive calamities because of decluttering. I think the calamity is really just leaving the clutter there to just
Yeah.
grow. I think
Yeah.
that's the big calamity. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
And
the third thing was really the waste issue is
mm,
fearing that you're doing something wrong. And I think we really just need to flip that whole conversation around and say, like, what is going to serve me at the highest level? And you get to fill in the blank there, but oftentimes it's not keeping this item of clutter. Generally, people know in their, intuitive brain, that intuitive voice inside them, that it is clutter and that it does need to go, kind of a thing.
mm.
So we can just rest on that and let everything else work out as it needs to.
What about objects that certain things that might, like, for instance, my mother was, who passed in pretty much just 20 years ago exactly. And she, when she passed, left like pieces of jewelry and little things. And she would have written the best thing about those things wasn't the jewelry, but she wrote these little notes that said, this was this, and this was this little, and for me, those notes mean more than the object itself. But um, but what do you do? I have a set of pans of hers that are still really good. Can you believe this? But they're getting a little crotchety now. But they were like from the 1950s. But these were like they built things to last back then. Like they like those old cars you see running around. These pans just like had a long, long shelf life. And I think of getting rid of them, and I'm like, but that's my mom. And so and her cookbooks too, like she had these big collection of cookbooks. I haven't looked at them in years. I would never use any of those recipes. They're all like circa 1960s, 70s recipes, right? But like things like that, where you're like, that's represent something to me that is really valuable to me. How do I let that go? Because they take up space and I don't need them anymore. And like the pans are getting now tattery and stuff. I don't need them in my kitchen.
So this is a beautiful question. It's, I think, the central question for so
Yeah, I'm
many
sure it is.
women and
Mhm,
also about so much of the clutter. And you said so much in there. It's fascinating, right? And you said it's my mother, right? And
mhm.
it represents so much. And that is all true. And you'll never lose your mother.
Yes,
So that's
this is true.
just for me very central, that no matter
Mhm,
what you do with the stuff, you'll never lose your mother. And
mhm,
and then my question would be to you, like, what do you wish for? And the wishes that you had were not to get rid of your mother. There was nothing in that, what you
mhm,
said about getting rid of your mother, but you did wish for more space and you did
mhm,
wish to be maybe done with the tattered pans.
mhm. Yes.
And that's something I think to be honored.
Mhm,
Um, just you and you looking at you.
mhm,
And so there is that energetic connection with your mother, and she did that lovingly, right? With the notes, with the jewelry, and with the cookbooks, and there is love everywhere. But I think you can safely and honoring your mother still let that stuff go.
Do you have like a system, like something like that seems to me something I did with the pans was I put them in a box and I didn't get rid of them yet. I just like put them away and I kind of hid them away so that they weren't in my cupboards anymore. They were just in this box. And then I forgot about them. Like I forgot they were there. They were like, I kind of said a little prayer over them as I was taking them out of the pans. And then, like, thank you for serving me for my mother. And then yeah, and I forgot about them and I could move them to, the trash bin. But I had to like kind of know that I was going to be over them before I put them away. They weren't going to serve anybody. I wasn't going to give them away to Goodwill, but um they were going to have to go in the bin. So is that part of a process? Like do some people have to do that? Like kind of have to like kind of have a middle zone where you're not getting rid of them yet, but you're like out of sight, out of mind so that you can deneutralize that attachment.
I would say yes, based on your story. And also, I'm sure that's true for many. I am thinking that because I help women declutter in the space with other women online,
Mhm,
that you can kind of bypass that phase because the energy of people freeing themselves of the stuff
mhm,
they don't need and seeing the effects in other
mhm,
people's lives is really contagious. So when you have to do
mm,
it on your own, yeah, you're going to feel the burden of it much
mhm.
more
Yeah,
powerfully, especially if it's this intimate stuff, but it's alleviated when you have the company of other women who are maybe
yeah.
dealing with stuff that is just as sentimental. So,
And probably not bypassing the guilt you might feel for giving away something of your mother's or throwing something away that she treasured, like that. Like if you see somebody else doing the same, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. I can do that too
yeah,
without the guilt. Because I think guilt comes into it as well, does it not?
guilt is everywhere when it comes to clutter, right? Guilt for
Mhm.
having it, guilt for not having done away with it, guilt for feeling guilty about your mother's stuff. Like there's so many different ways. Guilt is tricky that way. But again, once that stuff is out of your home, you no longer have to deal with that kind of energy. And think about, what kind of energy do I want my home to be filled with? And
Mhm.
does this stuff match that vibe?
Yeah. So I have another question. This is so fascinating. So as we age, I'm going to be 60 and I have been contemplating this so much this year, just like the whole, what my next chapter of life is. But at the same time, as you get older, you're also looking at the different chapters of your life in the past. And again, I'm not surrounded by my past. Like my office is very present. I mean, even though Looking at a lot of things, I was like, I could probably declutter this, but it's very, I don't have a lot of like things around me that are remind me of me, like when I was in my 20s or my 30s. And um, but if I got rid of something, like I have uh these articles of clothing, for instance, it was so hilarious. I remember because I've lost weight, like I lost weight a long time ago and I've kept it off. And I remember one of the things is like when I had lost weight and I was like around 45 or something. I still had something from high school. Like, I couldn't believe that I had it. Like, they made clothes pretty good back then too, so I had this shirt and I could fit into that shirt. And I was like, I don't want to give up this shirt. I had this in high school and then, during one of my thin phases in high school, because I was heavy in high school as well. And I was like, I can fit into it now, and I'm not going to give it up. Then I was just like, really, you're being so ridiculous. But, like we have these encapsulated memories of who we were. And we don't want to give those up because it's almost like, I mean, like this from an energy and from a psychological is like, I'm giving away that piece of my life. It kind of feels very attached to that, right? Do you see that a lot too?
Uh, a little
As people get
less.
older,
A
like,
little
okay.
less because I think I see more the kind of passively received clutter
Mhm.
more so than hanging on to pieces of a former life, I would say.
Uh-huh.
Um, but what you make me think is that this phase of our lives, the
Mhm.
post 50 years, is is still a developmental phase, right?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
we're still growing and changing, even though parts of society may not see it that way,
Yeah.
may see it more as a stagnation or a decline. And I think when you hang on to a past phase, it may block maybe a more vibrant movement into what your next phase could be. So that's
Mm.
what that I would say of any phase, right?
Yeah.
It's thinking about your security blankets when you're a kid,
Yeah.
right? You don't really do that when you're 50. You're, you might have
Yeah.
the memories attached, but generally, like we're good. We're good without this stuff. That may be the main point of them all, that you're good without the need for the
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I love how you were saying your mother's 83 and she's just learning ping pong. That's so great. It's so true. We are always growing and developing if we choose to.
I would
We
say
should
she's not
never.
learning. She's probably can we're aiming for LA Olympics 2028.
Is she really good?
She's I've got my competitive streak from somewhere.
Does she compete on a team
She just
or?
restarted. So, but yeah,
Oh,
she's a vibrant woman for sure.
that is amazing. So when people get clear, what are some positive things that you see people like stepping into because they've cleared their space?
I think just the enjoyment of the space is actually no small feat,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
see people's before and after pictures, and the after pictures are like magazine layouts with the light streaming in, and the furniture just fits just perfectly in the space. And you can almost feel the person's joy, even though they're not in the picture, which I
Hmm.
think is really great. And the transformations that people can do in such a short amount of time. I work with people in a very short span of a week to 7 days around decluttering. I think it's just amazing. So aside from the space transformation, there is the personal energy transformation where people do
Hmm.
feel physically lighter. That's what I experience every time I manage to declutter, and also more positively oriented. So
Hmm.
more willing to see, more able to see what the opportunities are instead of feeling burdened by shame, guilt, embarrassment, can't have people over stuff, which is very prevalent because clutter is very prevalent. And so I'd love to see people connecting more, being more open, just opening your heart again. I think those are the great side effects of doing this work.
Yeah. Okay. If they have somebody else in their household cluttering as well, do they kind of have a talk with them and get their permission or get them involved in the project as well? Have you seen that happen?
The beautiful thing that I've seen over and over again is that people start feeling they come to the work feeling very frustrated by other family members, but they leave the work feeling like they're really supported by the other family members because the
Yeah.
energy changes in the home once one person's energy changes. And so people can't resist helping, which I think is funny, beautiful, and also just like, well, of course they're going to help because they want that vibe as well. They want to clean, energized, uplifting space as well.
Really cool. Well, you have a challenge coming up. So tell us about this challenge that if you can join for free, right? Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yes. I invite all your listeners and all your listeners' friends to join. This will be the sixth time I'm running it. It will be running starting Monday, September 16th, and running for, I call it a 5-day challenge, but it's just a smidge more than 5 days because we have a celebration party at the end. And each day of the challenge, I will give a little instruction about energy, about clutter, about mindset, all these little pieces that we all need to be able to just get the bravery and get the courage up to use our time to address the clutter. It's called Re-Energize Your Home. And like Rita said, it's totally free. It's really this fun, super energized, like hyper energized couple of days. So I invite you all to join. I've got a link for everyone to join through Rita's program, through the podcast. And all you have to do is go to procrastinationcoach.com/Rita Black. So it's procrastinationcoach.com/Rita Black. And you can direct message me on Instagram if you have any questions about what I'm doing, what Rita and I have talked about, or the challenge. My Instagram is at procrastination coach.
And people love this. I've had so many people, we've had Christine on before, and I've offered her challenges before, and people are like, I love that challenge. That was so fun. I decluttered it is very thrilling for so many people. So, well, I'm glad you're doing this again. I'm excited, and I'm excited to have people sign up and enjoy this and get their space clean. I do think it is so important. I've been doing a lot of cleaning of my. I've got to clean my. I promised I'd clean my closet before I turn 60, so I have some room for some new, like, fantastic clothes for my 60s.
I love it. And what a great role model you've been to all of us, your listeners, but also to me as well, as you know. And what a great way to celebrate this new transition for you, right?
Yes,
New
I'm
clothes,
thrilled.
open closet, dream big, look great, feel
Yeah.
great. And thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for letting me share all this stuff
Well,
about the clutter and the challenge on the show today.
oh, yes, and tell us those links one more time, just in case people didn't hear it, and I will be putting them in the show notes as well.
Sure, thanks. It's procrastinationcoach.com/Rita Black.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christine. It was Dr. Christine, I should say. It was great to have you on, and we will have you again, back again. This was a great topic.
Look
Thank
forward to
you.
it. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Rita.
Thank you, Dr. Christine. That was amazing. I always love our chats. And don't forget, Dr. Christine has a 5-day challenge starting September 16th and running through the 20th called Reenergize Your Home. It's a 5-day challenge. It's free. Go sign up. The links are in the show notes. And remember that the key, and probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle, is inside you. So keep listening and find it. I will see you here, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, next week. Thanks for listening to the Thin Thinking Podcast. Did that episode go by way too fast for you? If so, and you want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release, head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to check the show notes to learn more about my book, From Fat to Thin Thinking, Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss, and to learn how to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode.